Good morning, everybody. This is a live severe weather briefing. Today we've got a slight risk across portions of central and southern Kansas into northern Oklahoma, but it looks like there is going to be just a little bit of disconnect between the thermodynamics, that moisture, and also the most favorable kinematics, or those wind fields for supercells and tornadoes. This is going to be day one, and then it looks like another severe weather threat tomorrow, including a more robust threat of tornadoes across western Tennessee, possibly into far southwestern Kentucky, maybe northern Arkansas, far southern Missouri. We're going to break down both of these setups, starting with today. This is the forecast HRRR surface dew points tonight at midnight Central Time, and here you can see the main moisture axis. You've got dew points in the upper 50s all the way up into northwestern Oklahoma. Even the eastern Texas Panhandle is forecast to be in the mid-50s overnight tonight, and it looks like that severe weather threat is going to develop late night tonight, developing first across the northern part of that pseudo-moisture axis. This will be across western Kansas, but as you can see, the storms are going to be a little bit displaced from that deeper moisture that is going to be lifting northward through western Oklahoma late night tonight. Tomorrow across western Tennessee, moisture is certainly not going to be an issue. Dew points are going to be in the mid-60s out there, right at peak heating. The timing is also not going to be an issue for that severe weather, with that jet streak ejecting pretty close to peak heating tomorrow. Today, though, timing is certainly an issue with that jet streak ejecting overnight tonight. That's going to fire those storms to the north of the deeper moisture across western Kansas. The environment is actually much more favorable for tornadoes further south. That'll be across the eastern Texas Panhandle into western Oklahoma. But right now, the high-resolution models are not showing any storms developing that far south. However, the HRRR does show some storms developing in far southwestern Kansas. That's about the closest that it gets to that deeper moisture, and there is a chance that we could have some transient supercells that develop pretty close to the Kansas-Oklahoma border late night tonight into the early morning hours. Likely some incredible opportunities for lightning shots if you can stay socially isolated, physically distanced out there. But it does look like the moisture is not going to meet up with these storms to develop a robust tornado threat overnight tonight. If storms can develop to the south of that elevated convection in Kansas and the far northwest Oklahoma, then I do think that there is a chance that those could develop an isolated tornado threat late night tonight if they can drill through that convective inhibition, but it definitely does not look likely. And here is the forecast HRRR precipitation at the same time, and you can see that that moisture, or that those thunderstorms that are initiated, are well north of that moisture axis, which is at this time at midnight tonight is surging to the north across the eastern Texas Panhandle and western Oklahoma. This is all elevated convection up here along the I-70 corridor in Kansas. Still, it is going to be prompting some severe thunderstorm warnings up there. This is a potent jet streak, and in the left exit of that jet streak, that's where you're getting the most lift. And since that jet streak is coming into the south like this at the mid-levels, those are the stronger winds embedded within the mid-levels. It's the left exit region that gets the most lift, and that's why you're getting that development of those storms to the north of the instability axis. Now they're thriving off of those lapse rates that are steep at the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere in the vicinity of that jet streak, but these are elevated above a deeper stable layer at the surface. The exception being this storm down here. These ones in the eastern Oklahoma Panhandle into far southwestern Kansas, maybe near the Liberal area. The convective inhibition is going to be a little bit more shallow on the southern end of this convective shield, and there still is some favorable kinematics as well on the southern end of this convective shield. And so near the Kansas-Oklahoma border into far northern Oklahoma, as these turn right a bit into the instability axis, there is a chance that in this area, north central Oklahoma, late night tonight, that there could be some storms that are able to drill through that stable layer at the low levels if they can develop strong enough mesocyclones. The parameter space is sufficient enough to get sufficiently strong mesocyclones that they can drill through that stable layer. That's why you often get tornadoes overnight, even when there's 75 to 100 joules per kilogram convective inhibition. Those strong mesocyclones are able to drill through that stable layer. So I'm going to be watching out for that potential tonight across northern Oklahoma as this area expands. Let's look at the surface map now. Well, first of all, let's look at the energy helicity index. This is a composite index that shows that those favorable parameters across northwestern Oklahoma. The energy helicity index is a composite index between instability and that wind shear. So that's storm relative helicity and CAPE. This is a 0 to 3 kilometer energy helicity index, so it's factoring in the 0 to 3 kilometer storm relative helicity and surface-based CAPE through the whole entire layer. And this shows that those storms across far southwestern Kansas are pretty close to those favorable thermodynamics that are lifting to the north across western Oklahoma and the eastern Texas Panhandle. The models do not show any storms developing across western Oklahoma, or there certainly would be a supercell threat, even an increased threat of a tornado or two. But the northern edge of that instability axis, late night tonight, midnight to 3 or 4 a.m. or so, up here across far southwestern Kansas into northern Oklahoma. This instability axis is going to shift east overnight with that left exit region of the jet. The low-level jet axis is going to move off to the east along with that as well. So I do expect these storms just to move off to the east, right near the nose of that instability, and possibly in this area across far northern Oklahoma, far southern Kansas at about 1 to 3 in the morning. I think that there is a very outside chance of a tornado warning or two, but most of that is going to be severe weather, damaging winds, that kind of thing across central, southern Kansas, possibly into northern Oklahoma. Looking at the surface map this morning, you can see a lot of fog in place, a lot of low-level stable air. That's what all these 3 lines right there mean in the surface map. That's all fog conditions here across the southern plains. You've got general easterly winds, calm easterly winds out here. Visibility is dropping below a quarter mile in spots across central Oklahoma. And that's just slight, very, very subtle warm advection well ahead of this jet streak. The jet streak is still over the desert southwest, so you're getting just a little bit of lift over that stable air that's at the surface, just very slight isentropic lift. Some fog here as well. Very, very dense fog. Here's the outline of Oklahoma. This is the Red River right here. You got the Texas Panhandle in the 40s out there. And really, you've got all day for this atmosphere to recover a bit, but it's never gonna recover. There's a good chance you'll never see the sun across the target area. But tonight, as that jet streak arrives across the region, there's definitely going to be elevated storms that will initiate across central and southern Kansas. Now let's see the evolution, at least of one model, of these storms overnight tonight. Again, this is at midnight. You've got a bit of a comma head here, a little mesoscale convective vortex that's developing underneath that upward motion through the upper levels of the atmosphere beneath that left exit region of the jet. You've got a nice elevated storm here that'll likely prompt some severe thunderstorm warnings near the Great Bend area, midnight tonight. And really, it's this storm down here near Liberal, closer to midnight, that we're going to watch to mature. This storm here has the greatest severe weather potential because it's closest to the instability axis. The convective inhibition is just a little bit less. And so this storm could turn right if it develops a transient supercell structure or a mesocyclone at the mid-levels. That could turn right and merge with that deeper moisture somewhere near the Kansas-Oklahoma border to the south or southwest of Wichita, near about 1 to 3 in the morning. So that's definitely the mode to watch, but really it looks like it clusters together, becomes elevated quickly. There's going to be some incredible lightning shots out there. You have some elevated storms that are developing with this warm front that's lifting north through central Arkansas in the early morning hours. And this is going to be the player for tomorrow across western Kansas as this warm front lifts north to near the I-40 corridor. And there are some favorable photographs out there across western Kansas for a tornado threat. So we'll definitely have to watch the progression of this warm front. And this is a bit of a mesoscale convective vortex that develops. This is near that surface low as well in the left exit region of that jet. And this surface low is going to be tracking along or near that warm front right across the Missouri, Arkansas border. And then it'll lift east-northeast through far southern Illinois. And it is tomorrow afternoon across western Tennessee where there could be an isolated supercell or a tornado threat. I have to decide whether just to continue to hunker down here chase the nocturnal threat tonight near the Oklahoma-Kansas border, or do I position for the warm front across western Kansas? I'm going to be sleeping in my car, using gloves, disinfectant wipes, in an attempt to stay safe from this viral pandemic, and also to more so to prevent any spread and do my part. But I'm going to definitely avoid all human contact, continue to avoid all human contact. So now I'm going to look at the NAM for tomorrow's setup, and this is that low-level jet axis. You can see it's focused across the Missouri River Valley, or the Mississippi River Valley there, eastern Arkansas into western Tennessee, and it's the nose of that low-level jet that is most of interest. This is at 18Z tomorrow. This is 1 p.m. Central Time, with the nose of this low-level jet extending north into western Tennessee, 50 knots out of the southwest to the northeast, and we can also see that warm front lifts north to near the I-40 corridor by early afternoon, and it's going to hold steady here through the mid and late afternoon hours right along the I-40 corridor. The surface low at this time is back across the intersection of Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas, and that surface low is going to track along that warm front just north of the I-40 corridor, and then eventually supercells will initiate well ahead of that surface low in the vicinity of this warm front across western Tennessee, and it's going to be that area where I think that the greatest threat of tornadoes is going to be. You can see that 50-knot low-level jet that is right over that warm frontal zone across western Tennessee. Stepping forward to 4 p.m., you've still got a 40 to 50-knot low-level jet expanding across western Tennessee. And then you've got that warm front in about the same area near I-40 there. You've got low to mid 60s dew points across western Tennessee, northeastern Arkansas in this zone. Looking at the 0 to 3 kilometer composite EHI index, you can really see that warm frontal zone here across central and western Tennessee that is quite favorable for supercells and tornadoes. Let's click and look at a forecast sounding here near the Jackson, Tennessee area at about 4 o'clock. You can see some curved, elongated photographs with a critical angle that is near 60 degrees. That's more than sufficient. That's sufficiently close to 90 degrees to develop that tornado threat in this environment. You've got some very strong mid and upper level winds associated with that jet streak as well, in excess of 50 knots out of the closer to due west. That's going to easily evacuate the rain and the hail from those updrafts. Here you've got a southwesterly low-level jet at about 40 knots. Some of the models, though, earlier in the afternoon are showing a more backed low-level jet closer to 50 knots, which would increase the storm relative helicity even greater near the vicinity of that warm front. Oh, here you can see the photograph. Sorry, I was blocking that out with my big noggin there. But if you could get that low-level jet up near 50 knots, you can see just how much it elongates those photographs. Still, though, you have a critical angle that's near 60 degrees here, more than sufficient to develop a tornado threat further east across portions of Dixie Alley. You've got a storm motion just north of due east at about 40 knots. And imagine a low-level jet near 50 knots out here at a kilometer out of the southwest. So that elongates those photographs even further. A lot of CAPE as well. That's this is the parcel temperature. The red line is the environmental temperature. So as long as that parcel temperature is warmer than the environmental temperature up to the equilibrium level, that's where you get positive buoyancy in CAPE. Look at the directional shear as well. South-southwest at the surface at about 10 knots, increasing to about 50 knots a kilometer above the ground out of the southwest. That's what's creating this strongly curved photograph and quite a bit of storm relative helicity to get a tornado threat tomorrow across western Tennessee. Right along this warm front, too, near the I-40 corridor, possibly as far east of the Nashville area, Jackson, along I-40 tomorrow afternoon. Certainly does look like an environment that, at least according to the parameters, is quite favorable for supercell and tornado potential. And with that relatively zonal flow aloft being pretty parallel to that warm front, that's going to increase the residence time of these supercells along this strongly sheared environment across western and central Tennessee as well. This is near a 0Z. You can see that axis of the low-level jet moves east into central Tennessee by tomorrow at about 7 p.m. So this is the area that I'm going to be watching anytime you've got 45 knots about a kilometer above the ground, it's going to create some problems. This is outside of the range of the HRRR model just now, but it does look like there's going to be some broken convection moving from western into central Tennessee tomorrow, including the threat force supercells right along that low-level jet axis. Here you can see the 0 to 1 kilometer shear. It's greatest to the north of the warm front, but anywhere right near that warm frontal zone, you've still got 200 to 300 meters squared per second squared helicity. So this is definitely a compact, interesting system to watch. Tonight, southern Kansas near the Oklahoma border, and then tomorrow, western Tennessee into central Tennessee right along that warm front. And now I'm going to take some questions from our Facebook supporters. Thank you guys so much for joining me, this community. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Kat, Michael, Karen, Rosa, Linda, Jessica, Mike Tice, he's awake early. Yeah, the mustache is growing back just a little bit. Thank you guys so much for joining me this morning. Quite a lot of severe weather to look at. We have southern Kansas into northern Oklahoma tonight, and then tomorrow the warm front across western Tennessee into central Tennessee. I'm going to have to decide whether I want to chase the lightning show tonight across southern Kansas, or do I head and cover the warm front across western and central Tennessee. I think that the chance of seeing a daytime tornado is definitely a lot higher across western Tennessee into central Tennessee along the warm front. I do think, though, that there's going to be supercells near the Oklahoma-Kansas border late tonight, and then I can also stay more isolated in the plains. Yeah, it could be, Edie, in western and central Tennessee, but still, there's a lot of bust scenarios with the setup. It definitely doesn't look nearly as dynamic of a system as it did earlier in the month, but there is a tornado threat right along that warm frontal zone, right along I-40 from western into central Tennessee. So it definitely is something to keep a close eye out on. Tulsa, definitely not in the clear tonight, Nicole. There is a very outside chance of a tornado, especially those supercells that develop on the southern edge of that cluster and turn east-southeast into northeastern Oklahoma late tonight between about 1 and 3 in the morning. Keep an eye out. It does look like mainly just a wind threat, but there is a very outside chance that these storms could drill down through that stable layer. It's a classic Oklahoma high convective inhibition type case. Yeah, allergies are definitely bad this time of year. It's normal to get allergies as you get all the blossoms coming out and all that. There are quite a bit of pollen. There's a big pop. It's just that time of year in the spring where there's quite a bit of allergies. Linda, I do think that early morning Tuesday, I would say, there's a decent chance of hail and wind in northwestern Oklahoma. So I think by Wednesday the system will be pretty far off to the east, but I think that in northwestern Arkansas, early tomorrow morning, early Tuesday morning, 7, 8 in the morning, I think that there's a decent chance of some isolated severe weather around your area. So thank you everybody for joining me. I'm going to go for a run, trying to keep my immune system boosted. And I'm going to head out and try to run through this fog a little bit. And then I'll position for either the warm front in western Tennessee tomorrow or the late night severe weather threat tonight. So stay safe, everybody. And we'll get through this. And we'll just continue to break down these photographs, break down the severe weather threat. And thank you so much for joining me. Never stop chasing. Have an incredible day. Dominate the storm.